everyone, and welcome to episode number 15. Yes, I said 15 of UCF Business Talk Live. For some reason, it's 8:30 in the evening, and I'm highly caffeinated, and I'm ready to talk to you along with the other rest of the team. My name is Roger Phipps, COO and founder for Seven Lights Marketing Agency, Bird Eye View Inc., Boss Leadership Solutions, and your consultant for everything business, leadership, ops, and tech. And this week, we're going to be discussing 5 mistakes to avoid as you start and grow your business. With that being said, I'm going to bring in the rest of the team. They're all familiar to you, and we'll talk about a new venture that we have going on, so they're going to be even more familiar to you. So without further ado, he does not have his collar popped. It's Josh Lazar. Hey, Josh.
You can't do you can't cross-pollinate the podcast.
Right? Oh, yes, we can. We absolutely can, and we absolutely will.
They don't know the jokes yet.
Yeah, I know, but they have to go watch the other podcast to find out. That's the whole point. It's like a teaser. So, excited to have you here, Josh. Yeah. As always, I just saw you 2 days ago or 2 nights ago. It's literally less than 24 hours. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and bring in Alan. Alan, welcome to the show.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah, this week this show he's like Smarty Pants with a Z. Smarty Pants with a Z for this show. Yeah, as you can see. Yep. So excited to have you guys back. And, it's funny because we keep alluding to this other show, but we get to, mix 2 of our passions, right? Which is UCF football, who starts its season tomorrow. I will be there. And then obviously business, right? So excited to have everybody involved with that as well. So for this show, we're going to be talking about mistakes. So it was kind of funny. We were talking a little bit earlier, pre-going live, about, different mistakes that you make as a business owner, as you grow, and they can hold you back from moving forward. And our first thing that we were going to be talking about is diversifying your client base and avoiding dependence, right? So, with that basically means you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? It's great when you get the big contract. It's great when you have folks that you're working with and you're excited about, and they're loyal clients. They're great clients. They're bringing you a source of revenue, but then you stop, right? Or you hang your hat on that, right? Or you focus too much on that group of clients. And all of a sudden you end up in a situation where, hey, some of them start to turn over. And if they're starting to turn over, then what happens? Well, if you haven't been doing your due diligence on finding other clients and diversifying your client base, all of a sudden you still have the same cost. You just don't have the revenue coming in. And that's a huge, huge problem. And creating dependence, doesn't just extend to the clients. It's also dealing with vendors or the way that you do things and creating dependence on yourself. So that's a big point of contention too. And it's kind of funny because we were kind of talking a little bit about that earlier, how you become more and more successful. You don't want to create an environment. You want to create an environment of people and a culture of people around you that can do the work when you're not there. So you can focus on other things and continuing to grow the business. So that very first step, since you started the business, since you probably started alone before you started growing your team, it's very easy to build a business around you that's dependent on you, and that's what you want to avoid. So, that's kind of what the point of this topic is. Let's start at the top or the bottom this time because Alan, for some reason, always goes second. I'm going to let him go first. So, Smarty Pants with a Z. Alan, take it away. What are your thoughts on that, and what experiences have you had?
Well, this is something I'm very, very familiar with because I made this mistake on a very big scale. I had about a year and a half into starting my business. I created a strategic partnership with a company that was basically a sales operation, and they needed someone for fulfillment. So they were basically selling legal clients on SEO packages that I was fulfilling for them. And at one point, it actually got up to 300 clients. It was the best time revenue wise for my business, but I completely stopped prospecting. I completely stopped getting leads for myself. I relied exclusively on them. And because I didn't need clients, I had as many as I could handle. I had to grow my team pretty quickly, and I didn't even have time or want to start prospecting. So I was down to maybe 3 clients that were just exclusively mine. And even my attention to them got less and less, to be honest. So what happened though, the partnership ended up after a year and a half, didn't work out. And I pretty much lost about 85% of my business overnight.
Wow.
That was a huge mistake and a huge learning opportunity for me. And I was thankfully able to grow my business back up with a lot of hard work and hitting the pavement, networking and everything. But it was something I vowed to never make again. I would never rely on one client, one source, one strategic partnership ever again. And you're going to have clients that are bigger revenue wise for you that you rely on a little bit, but the thing is you need to have clients, you need to have different areas of how you get clients, and you need to have maybe clients at different price points. Or if you're going to have some big ones, have multiple ones. So if you lose, one, it doesn't sting as bad, but you shouldn't be relying on one person to get you leads or one source. Because that you can really get burned if you stop doing all the things that you're normally doing, like networking, like cold calling, like cold emailing, whatever, and relying on one base. That can come back to burn you, and you wouldn't even expect it. You won't. Sometimes they make a decision and you didn't even realize it was coming. So if you're not going to be prepared for that, you can lose a lot of revenue, and then you have to start letting go of employees, cutting down on platforms that you're subscribed to, all types of stuff. So I would never, ever rely on one source for clients, or one strategic partnership, or one client ever again.
Yeah, that's interesting. You brought up strategic partnerships, right? So that's one I didn't even mention off of the top, but that's 100% true. Like, it's great when you're building up referral partners or strategic partners, right? But that can't be the core of your business, right? If anything, it should be a spark, or, as I like to say, an and proposition, not an or proposition, right? So, when you're thinking about that creates a ton of exposure for your business. And it's crazy that it was that much of your business. I mean, most businesses wouldn't survive that. So kudos to you for being able to navigate out of it. And from vendors and from a vendor perspective, you mentioned that as well, right? So if you're building your business and your products around being able to use specific vendors, if you no longer have access to those vendors because you don't have the capital to pay them, what happens to the rest of your business? What happens with your products? What happens with everything else that's involved with that? And not to mention, hey, they change their pricing all the time. They may change their terms. They may change their, whatever. So one of the things I will tell you, one of the things you can do when you're negotiating with vendors up front is, and many people don't think about this, is locking in your pricing into perpetuity, or locking the increase in pricing into perpetuity. You can do that on the front end of the contract, right? So as you're dealing with vendors that are vital for you, make sure that that you're using that and leveraging that as a part of your technology agreements and everything else that are in there. So great example. Thank you. Josh Lazar. And his collar went back down, so I don't know what's going on right now.
It's floppy, not poppy.
You're back to the floppy collar, huh?
So it's interesting. This is something that I'm now 6 months in, right? It's interesting. I was only a couple months in when we started this, and those strategic partnerships are something that's kind of coming to me now because of the specific things I do in LinkedIn. That's mostly where my marketing and communications channel is, to alert people that I exist. And those are starting to come in now, and they're definitely an and, not an or. So it's interesting. I'm in a specific industry, so my client base is all in that industry. So to me, diversifying can be finding other people in that industry, but there's still lots and lots and lots of area to grow. And maybe that's why I have the services side of Tech Think Tank, which is doing really good, and growing and getting new clients, and people are loving how we serve them. We actually went from just me, one IT director, to now we have about 3 former IT directors and CIOs working together to help and serve clients, maybe even a 4th coming up soon. So we're growing in that area, maybe because that's doing so well. That's why the other things that we're doing at Tech Think Tank are starting to grow. Just onboarded a new resource, and we're trying to really get our SaaS software up and running. Not just the GoldenKnightsClub.com we do for this, but there's 2 other products and 2 or 3 other products are being worked on at the same time with multiple teams to try to build that. Because my thought is the services might always be there. Maybe not, but it's pretty steady, and we can grow and further. But that's still substituting time for money, and hours of your work, your team's work, whatever. So I'm trying to avoid the dependence on just one area of one part of the legal market and services by building these SaaS applications that I think could be useful to that market and to others. So yeah, we've so far been pretty good. We've found more clients. We haven't had a lot of referrals quite yet. I'm hoping that will come over time. But there's not one client we have right now where they said, this is the last contract we're ever doing. It'd be 85% of the base.
Josh, yeah. It doesn't matter whether they tell you that or not. It's going to inevitably happen, and it can happen together. So I'm going to say insulate yourself there. But one thing you didn't address that I'm actually curious to see if you're thinking about or have a plan for. What happens, you're getting a lot of referral business, you're getting a lot of LinkedIn business. What happens when the work that you're delivering, because there's only 4 of you, what happens when you guys are so busy doing that you can't do the sales yourself? What have you built up around that to continue that growth? So that you don't, you don't lose that momentum.
So good question. And what I'm trying to do is twofold. One, I'm trying to productize kind of the core of what we're doing so it could be shared amongst multiple different CIOs. So the virtual CIO services we're providing, just onboarding a client last week. Last week. So for that, we have this short-term services we're going to do, and then hopefully an ongoing monthly software as a service-ish, because there's some humans in the mix too. So what I'm trying to do is productize some of what I'm doing, like you're talking about earlier, get me out of it so I can do the business development and I can make the connections. I'm also empowering the other people on the team to start building up their knowledge in the areas that it's not just the me show. And I've already shifted some of that elsewhere so I can bring in more business and do more of that. I'm also hoping, it's a hope, but one of the SaaS products I'm building should both be helpful to the industry, a revenue stream itself, and also be a potential future business driver too. So my goals are to productize some parts of it, and that's slowly getting there. I'm building products to also be not a sales channel truly, but something that's going to refer while it just exists and people come to it if it's built correctly.
So Josh, Josh, you've clearly given this a lot of thought, but I'm still hearing a lot of dependence on you. Even if you pull and you focus on BD, you're still doing all the BD, and your folks, huh?
I want to.
I understand, and this is the point, though, is right. You're going to need to have another team that you're starting to cultivate now, because all of the people that are on your team existing are currently like delivering on the services that you provide and will continue to do that, right? So I challenge you to think about that a little bit differently and what other sources you can do to get that. Now, I'm not telling you which direction to take that, but when you're starting to think about, Josh Lazar, right? And you can't be the sole person that delivers for all 4, especially if you want to continue that growth trajectory. So,
yeah, I do, and I have an idea of where that might go, but I want. To me, and maybe this isn't the right choice to make, but to me, I want to get to a revenue stream where I can think about those things and do other things, because I haven't actually been in my industry. I haven't been through the main cycle of where money comes in as a full-time person doing it and having multiple other people to add to the contracts and the services we provide. It used to just be the Josh show. Now it's the Josh and two other people show. So I still have that. I haven't gone through that cycle yet. My goal was to get through one of those cycles to see. But you're right. Like, I see others in my industry doing some of the have like director of customer success and looking at the BDR, SDR kind of areas, but not real. It's very light touches. So it's on the path, but maybe I'm just feeling too much like I need to get the money first and then figure it out.
So yeah, and I get it, right? I'm challenging you to put some thought into it, because where the money comes from is from your sales, right? And if you're the single point of contact and you have nobody else, one, you're limiting the growth and other things. And again, that's a discussion we can have at another time. I'm just challenging you because that's some of the lines of thinking that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
So think about that going forward. So.
And to note, it's not that I'm not. I just don't want to put anyone on 100% commission. I don't think that's right either. So that, and I don't want to completely outsource it to a third-party company. So again, it's in the works. But you're 100% right, and maybe I need to think about it differently myself too.
All right. So moving on, the next point that we had here was getting help with the books. So one of the things that people are good at is whatever their business or their passion is, right? Most people are not great accountants unless they're a tax firm, right? If you're a CPA firm, I don't think you have to worry about it so much, right? But everybody else are not accountants. So, understanding, even if you go and get your MBA, they'll teach you some accounting, how to set up a P&L, all that fun stuff. But it goes beyond that. When you start really thinking about it, and as you start growing, it's things like, okay, when you set up your original accounting framework, how many products and how many clients have you set up your ranges for, right? Because you're blocking your ranges for those entries. It's who's going to collect on that cash if you're out delivering and out selling, right? How is that going to be processed? Who's going to true up the numbers? All of those different things. Who's going to take care and make sure that the taxes are being paid appropriately on your payroll at the end of the month, right? You should not, you don't have the expertise in it. And there's a lot of companies out there for small companies that are under 10 that will leverage software that will help you. But there are some thresholds as you grow, right? And those thresholds include when you get over 50 employees, there's a different set of rules and laws that go along with it. And when you go over 100 employees, there's even more. And that's really when you should start thinking about an HR business partner full-time, right? When you get to 100 employees. But that's an aside. Getting help with the books up front will keep you. I have a neighbor who owns a very, very, very successful landscaping business, right? I mean, this guy, he's out from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night every single day. He's hired a bunch of different people. He's really good at what he does. So he has a lot of work. What he doesn't do very well is collect and keep his books. So he does everything by hand, right? He does have some things that are going through some technology where he can take his phone out and provide an invoice and get payment, right, through Square, but he doesn't use it. So I talked to him in January or February, and he hadn't collected payments from his clients since October, right? Number one, I don't know how he's paying his mortgage payment. Clearly he's doing really well because he had enough to not have to worry about collecting money. But number two, that stops you from being able to reinvest in the things you need, like more trucks and more trailers and more equipment and all of that other fun stuff, right? And it keeps you out of trouble. It's very easy to get to the end of the year and realize, okay, I'm doing cash-based accounting, but right? And if you're doing cash-based accounting and not cost-based accounting, or I can't think of the term right now, where you can't recognize the revenue right away. But anyway, if you're not doing that accounting, as you grow very quickly, if you are successful, you're going to end up in a pickle at the end of the year. And if you don't have it set up that way, it's going to be really hard to untangle that mess by the time you need to get there. So having someone who knows what they're doing, can set all those things up, knows the technology, makes it easy, and takes that off of you is truly a resource, whether that's a bookkeeper to start, just for the simple stuff, or going into an accounting. So how did you guys handle that, for your businesses? So I guess, Alan, you've been around for a while. How are you handling all of that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole, like, use the example of the landscaper example, that wouldn't work for me. I don't, if I haven't been able to run someone's credit card after, I'll give them a little bit of leeway, about 3-4 weeks, then I'm going to stop all service, because I have vendors to pay and I have, all that. So I'm not going to, unless it's someone I really, really trust and they're, telling me I got you or something like that. But there's a certain point where it's like, no, my payment system is great. I mean, obviously I have an extended agreement, a certain amount of months, and I get their credit card on a credit card authorization form. I put it into a platform called Pay Simple, and once you put in the information and the date, it just auto bills. I don't want to deal with Zelle. I don't want to deal with checks. Other people may disagree. I'm completely okay with a credit card fee, because I want to set it and forget it. And that's just how I always wanted it and how I always will be. After there was a period where I was waiting on checks and things like that, and I don't want to do that. So I require a credit card or ACH payment, and it just gets auto billed every single month. In terms of like bookkeeping, yeah, in the beginning, I was using like QuickBooks and doing all my bookkeeping, and even doing some of like the quarterly tax payments and things like that. And first of all, I always had to ask questions, and quite frankly, I just hated it. And I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a creative guy. So there was a point where I was using someone overseas. That didn't work out because they were just doing things wrong. So I just hired a bookkeeper down here locally in Fort Lauderdale that does all of my bookkeeping, as well as my end of the year taxing, does my P&L, does pretty much everything, gives me a report at the end of every single month. And I pay, a few $1,000s a year, but it's worth it. I never have to worry about it. I've never been audited or anything like that. And she takes care of the whole thing for me. And to me, it's a cost that's well worth it. I'm just not skilled in that department. I don't have zero desire to learn or save a few $1,000s per year to learn. It's just not worth my time. And it stresses me out more than anything. So ever since I've kind of given up that and delegated it to a legitimate bookkeeper / CPA, it's taken a great deal of stress away from me. And that's something I highly recommend. Maybe if you don't have the capital to do it in the beginning, maybe you find someone that's fresh out of college or something like that. Or, you maybe are doing it yourself on QuickBooks in the beginning. But to me, that's a easy investment for me that I have zero problem paying, because I don't want to do it myself. And I quite frankly don't have the skill set to do it.
So let me ask you this. Do you also have them keep track of your contracts, right? Because one of the things that your bookkeeper, accountant, whatever, should be doing, right? And I know I don't like to should myself, but they, if you're smaller, and it's this weird spot where you're from smaller and going to a larger organization, they should be handling your contracts for you. And by that, I mean, they will tell you, okay, hey, or handle, hey, this contract's coming up. Whoever the salesperson is in the organization needs to reach out, 60 days out, and start that process of making sure that we're signing the contract and, right, enforcing that increase that hopefully you've put in as optional year over year for yourself, whether that's 3% or 4% to keep up with inflation, right? So who's doing that work for you? Because if you've got more than 20 contracts or 30 contracts floating around, it's very hard to do that. And they're all going to end at different times. So there's got to be a way that you're handling that. Do you have any way to handle that?
Unfortunately, that is me right now. I don't consider the bookkeeper an internal team member. Not that I would have a problem with her knowing my contracts, but it's just not part of her scope, and I don't think she even does that. And plus, she's not an internal team member. I wouldn't feel right about her emailing or reaching out to my clients. It just wouldn't seem appropriate. But yet that doesn't mean I don't need a better system. Then it's me kind of, I have reminders set for when contracts end, and I'm kind of doing the customer service there and the reaching out and upselling or, cross-selling or all that. That's me taking care of that as the business owner, which I feel like that's important just for me, like as telling them, hey, your prices are going to go up. I mean, if I, maybe have someone that's right under me in the future, like a general manager or I don't know, maybe a director of sales or something, that would probably be delegated to them. But right now, no, that's kind of me handling that.
Okay. Josh, you're talking about all these contracts you've got that you're dragging in, which is awesome. Have you given that any thought, and how do you handle your accounting?
So tons of things in my mind. So let me just go backwards. So I'm pretty versed in legal technology. So contract lifecycle management products are a huge thing within legal operations. I happen to have the CEO of a company that has that type of software. So I use her software for my contract lifecycle management. When it comes to understanding when things are due and when contracts are up, usually the contracts we have are they're not ongoing. They're usually one-time affairs. We're getting into the ongoing contracts in the future, but they're pretty big. So big, but not quite ongoing. So because of so that's how I manage my contracts. So far, so good. It'd be nice if I didn't have to. I'll tell you my tech stack. PandaDoc is what I do for most of my signatures, template creating, drafting, and I like it a lot. It's a paid version. I enjoy working in that. I wish I had a contract lifecycle management software that had a really good digital signature product. They exist. They absolutely exist, but not for solos or small companies. So that's part of my stack. So I'm using Crush Contracts and PandaDoc. There you go. I'll name those two. Then when it comes to accounting, I have someone who is a CPA that does my books. I probably want to do that a little more frequently. But I use Wave Apps. That's the app I use. And it's funny because Wave Apps is pretty well known in the solo-ish small business community, in nonprofits too. But my CPA was like, what the heck is this? We aren't using QuickBooks. Until we did a year-end reconciliation together live. And they're like, oh, you could do that. You could do journal entries. You could do all that stuff. So it was good enough for now. QuickBooks might be the next evolution in the future. So I have been the treasurer for multiple nonprofit advisory boards for 6 to 10 years. I know how to do P&Ls, bank recs, and how to take care of transactions and things like that. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm not doing a bank rec on the first or second day of the next month. So we're slowly getting to, like you were talking about, a little too much work to do and less of this stuff to do. So eventually I will, this is definitely something I will completely outsource in the future. I'm getting to that point too. And I don't care if anyone looking at my books like that. It would be interesting because the people I'm working with are people I've worked with before. It'd be interesting to kind of put the contracts like you were talking about, Roger, tied to that. I get Alan's note that they're not an internal employee, but the people I'm working with, I would be, if they are willing to do it, I would trust them with it because we've had multi-decade relationships within business. So I'd be okay with that. But to the point, I agree, Alan. It's not the first thing that pops in my mind. So contracts are within Crush Contracts. They usually get signed for PandaDoc and moved over there. Wave Apps is where I put my billing and get that. And I love, I'm doing, for my SaaS products, I'm trying to figure out, we're using Stripe, but the big contracts I get, they always pay on time. Never had, in this industry, everyone pays, checks are cut well. You almost never have to do real recovery because there's never, the money's coming from a third party. Like, case in point, the contract we signed last week, the AP person wanted to make sure they got that out in the check run this week. So from signing the contract to getting the check will be within 5 days. That's not typical, and it's not small checks, but that's the speed and what I'm used to in this industry. Once I get outside the industry, then I might have some other things to worry about. But so far, so good.
So pro tip for you guys, when you're writing your contracts, write the renewal on the same day of the month for each one of them, right? So you may want to stagger it depending on how many clients you have over 2 per month, right? 2 dates per month. But that way you're not random days throughout. You have that. The other thing is in your contracts, make sure you write a 60 to 90 day cancellation clause, because if you have those contracts in there, they should roll. So whether it's 6 months, 12 months, which I don't advocate for 6-month contracts ever, but 12 to 18 months is probably the shortest I'd ever do. But if you have that built in there and you have that cancellation language built in there, then you've got yourself protected. Even if you miss it, it will automatically roll.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
the other part about it is, make sure that those contracts also have in the cancellation clauses that, they owe either a specific portion of the contract, like, so 90 days or 180 days or whatever it is if they do cancel, or the remainder of the contract, because you can negotiate on that. Someone cancels, that doesn't mean you have to give up, right? Mm-hmm. Negotiate with them, because it's free money. You're not having to deliver on it, and it's money that you can use to go solicit and replace that money and continue growing. So make sure you have that in your agreements as well. When it comes to accounting and when it comes to contract management and all of that other stuff, it can be really, really, really hard later on, once you start growing, to come back and renegotiate those terms in that contract. So make sure you have them in there up front. It'll make your life a whole heck of a lot easier later on. So we've kind of talked about getting help with the books. Definitely recommend having some sort of bookkeeper or something like that. If you're trusting them with your money, if you're trusting them with your EIN, if you're trusting them with your taxes, if they are in-house, you should be able to trust them with their contracts. If you can't trust them with contracts, then you've got bigger issues and they shouldn't be doing your accounting. So, that's something to think about as you kind of move along as well. All right. So the next topic that we have is finding the balance to drive business success. So this kind of dovetails very nicely into some of the other stuff we were talking about. We were talking about creating and avoiding dependence on ourselves. We were talking about diversifying your client base. And a lot of that digs into and dovetails nicely into, one, how you grow is something that's super important, right? If you're on a rocket ship, make sure that that you're on the rocket ship, that you don't wait until you're absolutely completely leaned out before you start somebody, because it takes a while to acquire them. Then you've got to get them onboarded. Then they've got to get the training, and then they've got to learn how to do their specific role. And that takes a little bit to get on that guide path. So yes, you want to run lean. You absolutely want to run lean, but you don't want to run yourself dry. And that's, that's a super important thing for you, because it's not just finding the balance for yourself as a business owner, which is something we'll talk about, but also finding the balance for your team, right? You don't want them coming in to work dreading and wanting to leave work every day because you're not giving them the resources to be successful. So, you're going to hit growth spurts, and you want to make sure that you're being thoughtful, with your strategy, your people strategy, to make sure that that's a success. Also, finding balance to drive your business success. If you are running yourself so ragged, for various reasons as a business owner, right? Because you're doing all the BD, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and you're doing this, and you're worried to make sure you're making payroll. if you're doing all that, you are not going to have a successful business. You're not going to have the time, and you're not going to be able to stop and think about what you need to do and when you need to pivot. So we talk about pivoting all the time here on this show, and you need time to do that, and you need the mental capacity to do that too, right? Because if you don't, then what you end up doing is just going to work, doing the tasks, and you as the leader of the organization, you're going to run it into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. You're going to run yourself into a brick wall. Your family life's going to suffer. You're not going to be a happy camper. And folks look to you as that leader, and you can only put a brave face on for so long. It will affect everybody else around you, and they will stop leaving or start leaving, and you won't be able to grow. And then that turns into like a death spiral. So it's something that's very, very important that you're finding that balance, not just from a work perspective, but from a personal perspective. Are you taking time for yourself to brain dump? Are you taking time for your family and your kids? It's very easy to say yes to continue to work because it's almost addictive and you want it to continue to grow. And in some ways, if you have a family, you're doing it for them. But that doesn't mean that you should do it, to a point where you're running yourself ragged for work, running yourself ragged for your family, and not being able to find some balance so you can continue to grow. Because if not, you're not going to grow. It just won't happen. Your energy won't be there. Your time won't be there, etc. So, that's my balance conversation or start to that conversation. When you found yourself in the position that you were in, Alan, where you lose 85% of your business and you have to scale back, like, how did that upset your balance, whether it be your physical balance, being able to maintain yourself from a health perspective, your mental health balance, your family balance, and everything else, because all of that was dumped on your shoulders. So how did you navigate that? Was there anything that you used that helped you?
Yeah, I can be honest. It was one of the most stressful times of my entire life. I was considering quitting and getting a job, going back into corporate America. It caused immense stress on, my wife. At that time, I hadn't had my son yet, but it was very, very stressful. I was very, very down, and I was negative, to be honest. It affected my mental health for sure. I put so much into my business and having succeed. It's like, my business is in my thoughts daily, hourly, before I go to sleep, when I wake up. Obviously I have hobbies and a family and things I care about, but it's such a huge part of my life that when I lost that, it reminded me of the time that I got let go from the job that I had prior to starting my business, where I was kind of shell-shocked, blindsided, and it really hit me hard. But, I felt that I had two choices. I could go to corporate America and give up and, start over somewhere at a job, or I could, get myself out of the gutter. And I made a thing to myself that I wouldn't give up my business unless after 5 years I got nowhere. And at that point I was a couple years in, and I was like, I'm not going to give up. Fortunately, I had a decent amount in the business bank account from having that strategic partner that I mentioned. So for me, it was, taking a couple weeks to just like readjust and think what I was going to do. For me, it sounds cliche, but I went back to the basics, and I joined networking groups. I joined professional associations, and I strive to, put out a lot of content, and I was hosting live events and webinars and things like that, and just getting my name out there. And I fortunately had mentors to lean on. I think that was probably the biggest thing for me was my dad has been a business owner for 40 plus years, pretty much never worked for anyone else. I leaned on my business partner, Juan, who we had at the time. At that point, he wasn't my business partner, but he was someone that I trusted and spoke with pretty frequently. That was a big part of it. And just believing that I could get back to where I was. And, I even invested some money at that time into consultants, business consultants, but also just kind of like wellness coaches or motivational coaches, I should say, people that, helped me get out of the mindset that I was in. So it took some some personal building. And, I'll say even at this point, I'm not quite back to the level I was, but I have the faith now because I've built it back so much, like probably 75% back. So I know that I can do it, but it took a lot of soul searching and not relying on myself. I realized I couldn't have all that stress on me. So when I started speaking to my father and Juan and a couple other people, it helped me know that I could get that confidence back and then I could build it back up if I really, set my mind to it and tried. As cliche as it was, it just was not going into my own mind and going down a rabbit hole that I didn't want to go down to. Even as tough as it was, I think you have to rely on other people in those moments.
Well, I think also, the smartest thing you did was, you identified it was a problem and invested. You were self-aware. A lot of people aren't, or it discouraged them so much that they don't pivot off of that, right? I mean, owning a business is a struggle. It's the one constant's change. Sometimes you're up. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, the struggles are just different. The challenges are just different. Right. But having the wherewithal to take a step back and invest in yourself, because we had this conversation the other day. We're always our own worst clients. Right.
Yes.
You hear me say that all the time. And part of you being a client, you are your own client as well, because if you are not operating, you are not delivering, then you have to work on yourself to get to the level of where you need to be, right? So we don't think of ourselves that way. We're the ones that are constantly delivering, and when we're constantly delivering, we're not improving or innovating or iterating ourselves. And that's something that's tough to do, especially if you have something negative happen. That's part of the reason we harp all the time about building that network of people that you can lean on when times get tough, or to, when you're in that negative mindset, it's very hard to see that there are options and start acting towards those, right? You get stuck in the negativity and it seems like this giant hole, when really the best thing you can do is like a running back. You dig your right foot in the field and dig in and pivot and move to the left and juke that next problem, right? And start going the other direction so you can find the open field. It's the same thing in business. You've got to be able to, and if you can't do it for yourself, because there's going to be times you can't do it for yourself, surround yourself with the people that are going to help you get to that place, right? And that's part of what networking or connecting, as Josh reminded me the other week, is not all necessarily about connecting for business. It's also, connecting to get a hold of their networks, but it's to find people that you resonate with, that you can trust, or you find value in their experience to help you through those tough times. And that balance is what drives you through. So awesome story. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, because it's not easy to talk about when things don't go well.
Yeah. And one more thing, it takes a lot of mental fortitude to be a business owner. And I think you always have to know that as easy as times can be, there may be hard times or vice versa. And, the biggest thing to me is just take really, when I say go back to the basics, what I did when you have those tough times, just go back to the things that you have worked for in the past, work, and just take one step every single day. Like, or even if at the beginning of the week, all right, I'm going to do everything I can to book 5 appointments this week. It's not even about sales, even if it's just to learn something, to meet someone new, to get into someone's network, attend a meeting, just take some action and don't freeze. I mean, that's the biggest thing that I learned, is just not freezing. When I lose a big client, is, all right, how can I replace them? How did I get that client in the first place? What industry? Where did I meet them? How did I meet them? And just go back and do one thing. There's always something you could do. I mean, you have these hours in a day, and there's always something that you could do that's going to be productive, and you don't know where that next client or that next big deal is going to happen. But if you don't take any sort of step, it won't happen if you just sit there frozen.
All right, Josh, you've been listening to us talk about this. Clearly, we're very passionate about it. We've been in the game a little bit longer than you, so it's it's something that we've both experienced, and you will too. What are your thoughts on that?
So there's actually a group that I'm a part of, which might lead to some of the things you're talking about. And one of the things they're doing is they are having a podcast or video series about failing forward, right? Things are going to not go well at times. Mistakes are going to happen, even if you try to avoid them. So what is the next right thing, the next best step? And so everything you're talking about feels like that same of ethos, and that's basically what I'm doing. And right now it's a small team, but the whole goal is to move forward. So right now, I definitely don't have that balance, and I already know it, right? Because I keep saying I'm going to bring on someone else to do something, or to kind of talk about that earlier, and I talk about it every time I get a big contract or a reasonable sized contract. I'm like, okay, now is when I'm going to hire someone to do some of these other pieces: administrative assistant, project management, et cetera, et cetera. And just in the sales example, right? I want to pay someone, right? That's the whole goal. I want to pay someone well and give them experience, if that's what's available, to help them grow, to help us grow. So right now, it's tight. Like, I feel like I don't want to take on another client for the rest of the year, but I can't do that, because if things come in the door, we want to be able to service the needs of the clients well. So openly, I don't have the balance I want, and that's because we onboarded a new client, and we're about to have a pretty good contract with them through almost the rest of the year. But the way I'm trying to do that, I compartmentalize. The balance I'm trying to find is within serving. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clients I'm kind of working on simultaneously with the team. So sometimes it's the X client night, and sometimes it's the Y client night, and because they can all be done at any point. There are deadlines, but none of them are. Even the nearest deadline is 2 weeks out. There's time. So what I'm trying to do is compartmentalize some of that. Then I'm also trying to, have we're doing something on a break this Labor Day, and I'm trying to find times to have family time and time for me. I'll tell you the one thing that has kind of dropped off, and that balance between business success. So far, we're doing great. And life is, I'm not working out a lot. And actually, that's something some of us maybe on the team here can relate to. I can't remember the last time I had the time to get to a gym or anything related, because of both business and because of family. So that's, to me, the first thing that drops off. And it's not, I love going and playing sports. So I play pickleball, I play basketball. Sometimes I'll actually go lift weights a little. But I love that. And I just have too much business to do it right now. And that's why I need to be have the business not as dependent on me. But I'm in that transition period. I'm not 5 or 6 years in. I'm hoping this is a temporary blip until I organize and get things the way I need it to be. So then the business is less dependent on me, but I'm still driving and doing the things that I love to serve clients well.
Josh?
Yeah.
That'll never happen. It'll always be until then. So, there'll always be the next thing. So what I'm going to give you some advice on, and from me having more gray hair in my beard than you do, is you need to plan that into it now. The one thing I heard you say, which I really appreciated, which we didn't speak about within the scope of this conversation yet, right, was the ability to organize time. You have to take the time to organize it. If you are just reacting, right, you will get run over. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. And if that happens, that's a problem, because you're not going to be able to do all the things that you want to do, grow, etc., if you're doing that. So at the end of the day, organizing your time, when you do organize your time and you realize you only have so much time, part of what ends up happening is you realize you need other people, right? You need to grow, and you don't have enough. If you're just reacting, you're just going to run from fire to fire to fire to fire. And when you do that, you lose perspective, and from a 10,000 foot level, you use your ability to grow, because if you can't pivot and you just keep running, you're going to run out of breath eventually. Even the best runners who are running the longest races and marathons, right? They train for the marathon. They don't run. They don't train for the marathon plus another marathon. I mean, you have ultra runners, but the human body is not. You only have so much to give, and you only have so much time to train, right? So again, if you're running a marathon, you're spending a lot of time training. What happens to the rest of the aspects of your life? You have to water your own life. And that's organizing your time. And right, that physical stuff that we're talking about right now, that's part of being a successful business, because you lose the energy. You don't have the energy to do the things that you need to do, right? Mentally, that cortisol builds up in your brain, and it has all kinds of negative effects, not just health effects, but also on your performance. So, when we're thinking about these things, and it's interesting because I have a very unique view on this, because for those of you that don't know, I am half German. I was born in Germany. I have a whole side of the family that's in Germany. Their work week is 35 hours. Their GDP per person and what they produce is higher than what we produce in the United States. So that sounds, as a math guy, unlike Alan, I'm not a creative. I'm a math guy. I mean, I can get creative. Don't get me wrong. Like, I come up with some cool stuff every once in a while, right? But by and large, that is counterintuitive. But the reason for that is because they force them to go home, right? And so they're operating at a higher level when they are there. They're getting more productivity out of that 35 hours a week than the average salaried employee does in the United States that's working 50. It takes a toll. And if it isn't taking a toll, what it's doing is it's causing you to walk away from your desk every once in a while, and you're doing more chatting. And we've already established earlier in one of the shows, you've got 20 minutes it takes you to get back in the mindset of where you were when you leave that, right? Yeah. So again, it's vital for you. It's vital for your business to make sure. And I hate to say, I know I sound like I'm on my soapbox again. I like to get on my soapbox, right? But you got to understand, this is coming from a coach's perspective, right? Or from someone who consults for people, because I've seen it time and time again. I've done it myself, and I see what it does. And sometimes it takes someone paying me $250, $300 an hour to tell them, stop, look at what you're doing. Focus on yourself, invest in yourself, because if not, you're not going to move anywhere. It's like getting stuck in mud. So again, I hope it doesn't come across as patronizing. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I want people to understand and hear from me is you are worthy of investment. If you don't feed your own machine, you're going to wither and die. And whatever that means, whether that's your personality, whether that's your marriage, whether that's your physical health, whether that's your mental health, none of those things, if they're suffering, are going to make you a more successful business person. None of them. They're only going to detract from that. So again, at the end of the day, it's so important to find. Now, I'm not saying, hey, go all in on those other things, but find whatever balance is right for you. But at least make sure that you're carving out enough time so that you're investing in yourself. And it's easy to say, but very hard to do, because there's always something else to do. And sometimes it means, hey, you have somebody else do it for you and organize your time.
Yeah. And I'll say two things to that. One, when I first got started in this, when I was a month or 2 or 3 in, I was like, oh, I'll be able to do what I want. I'm my own boss. Yeah. But no, because the clients are your boss in all retrospect. So that's part of it too. But of a note, and maybe we'll talk about it later, tangentially related-ish, but kind of sort of not. I've seen this as an issue, and actually I've seen this as an issue when I was talking to the owner, well, I don't say the owner, the a C-suite level person at $1 billion company. We actually kind of ideated some of these problems we were talking about, and there are some technological solutions for some of them. We're trying to Tech Think Tank. We're trying to build a product that's I'm dubbing the "Don't Drop the Ball" product. So we'll see where that comes, how that comes out. But even if you're not a business owner, if you're a C-suite in a big company, or you're executive in a smaller company, or you're a company of 10 and you wear many hats, these things that you're talking about, Roger, are things that happen all the time. And sometimes maybe if we trained ourselves to have deep work for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, that might work. But that's not how all of us are trained, especially if you're remote, like if this is your office, right? I love what you're saying. I agree with all of it. I know I need to focus and figure out what I'm doing myself, and I'm going to take some actions personally. But I'm hoping maybe a piece of software that might help me too, and others. If it's good enough, people are probably going to want it. So anyway, I just want to pop back in there because you're right. And as you say that, I already was like, okay, tomorrow morning, I think I have a little time before sports and other stuff. I'm going to go play some pickleball at least. So we'll see. We'll see.
And I can tell you, all those roles that you just mentioned, I've sat in all those chairs. So, I've worked for Fortune 500s. I've had multi-billion-dollar P&Ls that I've been in charge of, hundreds of people that I've been responsible for. I've also worked at startups, right, and built startups. I've also worked at mid-sized companies. So you're right; those challenges are the same in different ways, right? And as you go further up the chain, if you're not an owner, and you actually are in that leadership or executive role, one of the challenges with that is there's always something to do, and one of the hardest things to do is to leave something. And the best lesson I ever learned is it's not ever going to get done all in one day. So the best way to do it is give yourself a fixed amount of time, with some exceptions, right? Every once in a while, you're going to have to do that. But give yourself a fixed amount of time of work each week and force yourself to reprioritize, because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, and you end up in the situation that you're in. So realistically, at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, and the beginning of the week and at the end of the week, what are their priorities? What can you move? And leave some holes in your schedule where you can move those things around, and it'll make it a lot easier to do that. The other thing I'll say is your clients are not your boss. Your clients are not your boss. You are your boss, and your team is your boss. Okay? That's who you're beholden to, right? Yes, your team works and has a partnership with the clients, right? But the clients will leave you. And sometimes you have to fire them.
That's also true.
So at the end of the day, your clients are your partners. They are not your boss. You are your boss, and your team is your boss. So I wanted to make that distinction.
Okay, I can see that.
All right, so we're running up at 58 after, so pretty close to our traditional 107, which we went way over last time. Any other thoughts, concerns, closing thoughts? Let's go with closing thoughts since we have 10 minutes. And actually, before we do that, let me say a couple of things. One, do us a favor if you're watching this on LinkedIn. Make sure you're going to the YouTube channel that we have. Like, subscribe, and follow there. Do the same thing on Twitter. We have UBT Live is also a Twitter account. It helps us get the word out to other people. We appreciate everybody who finds value in what we're doing. We look at the numbers, and when we see, literally hundreds of people watching this thing live at 8:30 on a Thursday, typically, but tonight on a Wednesday, it means a lot to us. That means you really do find value in what we're talking about, and that's all that we're after. So thank you for that. Help us tell others, because again, we're not getting anything out of this. This is for everybody's benefit. And if you like my tirades, maybe other people will like them too. So that they're all meant to come from a very, very good place. The other thing, let's see, you mentioned our GoldenKnightsClub.com. What do you have an update on that, Josh?
Yeah, I was just checking that. I knew you were going to get to that, so I was checking that momentarily. I think the last digest I got, I think I sent it over to you. We're getting some good numbers on there. It's slow and steady type wins the race, but yeah, I sent that over. We're getting some 25 sections a week. I believe that's where we're at right now. So sessions are unique. So we're getting people going to the website. So it's wonderful. And if you are someone who is interested in adding your business there, we greatly appreciate it. Well, again, there's that's just to help knights help other knights, right? So if you go there, you'll see people who do photography and wellness and marketing, legal, IT, all kinds of things. So if you want to see yourself up there or broadcast that, it's not Google, right? But if you want a concentrated place where you know exactly who you're working with when it comes to their affiliation of university, that is definitely where we're at. So getting some traction, doing well. We'd love to see more people up there. And of course, as we always say, by the end of the year, love to have someone make some money by contacting and finding someone on GoldenKnightsClub.com.
And it's a great way to network as well, based around needs, right? So or connect, as Josh. I'm going to eventually train myself to do that. It usually takes 16 weeks to break a habit. So you guys, if we make it through 16 weeks of content, maybe I'll get it by the end of that.
Yeah, it's all good.
But those connections that we're talking about, those are that's super good places to do that, because even if you don't have service, but if you have knowledge around one of those needs that people are expressing on the site, make sure you connect with them to share that knowledge with them, or point them in the right direction. Or, if you've had a piece of technology that's worked well for you, make sure you're connecting with those folks. Their contact information is there. Again, it's all, like you said, knights helping knights. So super excited about that. Let's talk about one other quick thing. We've kind of been alluding to it. What our passions are. Obviously, you guys know from our earlier shows that where we all met was, yes, we had a passion for business, but we also had a passion for sports. And so what we have done is we've combined forces along with a former UCF football star that you may know, named Trey Neal, on the infamous 2017 national champion team. Yes, I'm going to own that. Some of you folks don't believe in that. That's fine. I believe in it. It's in the record books. He has joined us for a show around UCF sports. Now, all of us have some experience with UCF sports and providing podcasting or radio or whatever. And we're excited to launch that venture together. It's called The Knighted Ones. You can either watch it on YouTube, and again, please subscribe or like, or we're also available via all your traditional podcast platforms. So whether it's Amazon or Apple or Audible or Spreaker or whatever you Google Play, whatever you like to use, it's out there. We've got some work to do on tightening some of the things up, but from a technical perspective on the recordings, but we feel like the content is really, really good, and we hope you join us in uniting with the patch. No, I mean, not the patch. I brought that old marketing camp. That was an actual marketing campaign for UCF folks. So
I had a patch.
I had
one too. I actually have a picture.
I had a pink one. Actually, I think I still have the pink one. That was kind of nice.
It was hanging in my car for the longest time before I got a new car.
Dude, that dovetails. Did you leave it in the car, or did you sew the patch onto the seat?
It was hanging over the rearview mirror, and I don't know if I took it out when I sold the car back to the dealership. I don't remember, but I was like, hey, I have no use for it. Might as well have it hang here. I mean, go Knights, right? Whatever.
Yeah, charge on. Well, now you can night your ride and have that right on the front, which is what I have. So
yeah, I got my license plate.
Your ride. Yeah, well, I got the license plate and the sticker for the Expressway Authority in Florida. We all need the stickers to be able to get around on the toll roads. And I encourage you all to night your ride because it does go back to UCF. So anyway, now that we've gotten off on that tangent, I just wanted to let you guys know that we have a link tree. We also have a Twitter account out there, so please follow. We had it out for less than 7 or 8 hours. The first episode, I released it in the middle of the day and had over 130 views. So clearly, and a lot of likes and a lot of subscribes. So clearly, we're making some content that people like, and we hope you join us there as well. Okay. I guess this is the point of the evening. Let's share where everybody can find each other. So let's start with Alan Smarty Pants with a Z.
As you can see, right? My name is Alan. As you guys know, my company is Smarty Pants Marketing with a Z. You can find me on all the major social networks or on my website, smartypantsmarketing.com. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly checking that. Or email me at alan@smartypantsmarketing.com. And it was a great episode tonight, guys.
Awesome. All right. Go ahead, Josh. What about you? Where can people find you?
Sure. So you can find me at techthinktank.com and at somesparetime.com. If you need anything related to technology and operations and making sure they're strategically in sync for your organization, that's really what we succeed well at, operational analysis and technological analysis. If you want a really cool bespoke event for your organization, whether you are trying to do it to build goodwill like we were talking about here with your team, or if you want to do that as a vendor for someone you're trying to make sticky and continue to be a client, or you're trying to do business development, Some Spare Time is starting to get some traction there. We're doing some events here in the Central Florida area for a vendor that has conference in Orlando. Who would think about that, right? So lots of things going on there, and you can. The best way to get me, go look me up on LinkedIn, Josh Lazar. I'm the one with the bowling ball.
All right, Josh, you left me 8 seconds on 107. Thanks, but that's not happening. So we're gonna have to go to 108 now. For all your marketing needs in small business, legal, medical, and higher education. Also in any kind of video production or post-production, you can find us at 7lightsmarketing-agency.com. I'm r.phipps at 7lights-agency.com. Or for any of your consulting needs, you can also reach me at bossleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And I'm going to be adding a few more things to that in the coming weeks. So I'm excited to talk to everyone about that. And you can also find me on LinkedIn at, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, you've already found me, but it's Roger Phipps MBA. If you're watching on Google, and I'd be happy to talk with you as we expand our networks and help and figure out ways that we can help each other. That's been another episode of UBT Live. Thank you everyone for joining. And on to next week. As a reminder, we will also be live on Wednesday as we have a special guest that will be joining us. And he'll be talking a little bit about what to do and how to plan your exit from a business. So super excited about that, because that should, people think that maybe that comes at the end. No, that comes at the beginning, especially if you have investors. They want to know how you're going to exit out of your organization so that they can make money and cash out. So thanks again, everyone. We love each and every one of you. Go Knights. And remember to like, subscribe, and grind.
Oh, we almost got it. Almost. You got to get the lays in there.